This is chapter 21 of the Westing game, and it's called The Fourth Bomb. The door to apartment 2C opened. Flora Baumbach screamed, and Turtle flung herself on the pile of money they'd been counting. It was Theo, not the thief. "Can I borrow your bike for a few hours? It's very important." Theo was not a runner like Doug, who was fuming about his being so late. He needed the bicycle to follow Otis Amber right now. Turtle stared at him in stony silence. "I didn't make that sign in the elevator. Besides, you already kicked me for it. Please, Turtle?" She still wouldn't answer, punk kid. "I had a long talk with the police today, but I refused to tell them who the bomber was." "What's that supposed to mean?" "What does she think it means? It means that he and everybody else knows that Turtle is the bomber." "Never mind. Can I have your bike or not?" "Why do you want it?" Theo ground his teeth. "Take it easy. Anger won't help any more than blackmail did. Try being a good guy." "I saw Angela in the hospital today. She sends her regards." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You let me have that bike, Turtle Wexler, or else." Turtle did not have to ask what "or else" meant. Police, bomber, Angela. But how did Theo find out? "Here!" She threw the padlock key across the room and waited for him to rush out before she let go of the money. "He's such a nice boy," Flora Baumbach remarked. "Sure," Turtle replied, dialing the telephone number of the hospital. "Angela Wexler, room 325. "Room 325 is not accepting any calls." Turtle hung up the phone. If Theo knew, others knew. Angela had set off those fireworks wanting to get caught, but it was different now. Now she was confused. Now she was just plain scared. They could force a confession out of her in no time. The guilt was right there, staring out of those big blue eyes. Maybe they're questioning her now. "Baba, I'm not feeling so good. I think I'll go home to bed." Weaving through rush hour traffic on Turtle's bike, Theo trailed the bus to a seamy downtown district across the railroad tracks where Crow and Otis Amber got off. Skid Row. The pair wandered through the dimly lit, littered, and stinking street, bending over grimy bums asleep in doorways, raising them to their unsteady feet, and leading the ragtag procession into a decaying storefront. Paint was peeling off the letters on the window. Good Salvation Soup Kitchen. A drunken wreck of a man lurched into Theo, who put a quarter into the filthy outstretched hand, more out of fright than charity. Snatches of hymn singing drifted toward him as the last of the stragglers staggered through the door. Theo crossed the narrow street and pressed his nose against the steamy soup kitchen window. Rows of wretched souls sat hunched on wooden benches. Crow stood before them in her neat black dress, her hands raised toward the crumbling ceiling. Behind her, Otis Amber stirred a boiling mess in a big iron pot. Theo pedaled back to Sunset Towers at a furious pace. Whatever brought Crow and Otis Amber to these lower depths was none of his business. He hated himself for spying. He hated Sam Westing and his dirty money and his dirty game. Theo felt as dirty as the derelicts he spied on. Dirtier. The judge thought they'd finished with the heirs. "Not quite," the doorman said. McSuthers. Alexander McSuthers, called Sandy, age 65, born Edinburgh, Scotland, immigrated to Wisconsin, age 3, education, 8th grade, jobs, mill worker, union organizer, prize fighter, doorman, married, 6 children, 2 grandchildren. Westing connection, worked in Westing paper plant 20 years, fired by Sam Westing himself for trying to organize the workers, no pension. Sandy turned to a blank page, pushed his taped glasses up the broken bridge of his nose, and looked at the judge. Name? It did not seem sporting to investigate one's own partner, but McSuthers was right. This was a Westing game. Of course, she had kept some facts from him about the other heirs, but only because she did not trust his blabbering. Josie Joe Ford with a hyphen between Josie and Joe. Age? 42. Education? Columbia. Law degree? Harvard. The judge waited for the doorman to enter the information in his slow, cramped lettering. He had to be meticulous in order to prove he was better than his 8th grade education. It's a pity he had not gone further. He was quite a clever man. Jobs? Assistant District Attorney, Judge, Family Court, State Supreme Court, Appellate Division. Appellate has 2 P's and 2 L's. Never married, no children. Westing connection? The judge paused, then spoke so rapidly Sandy had to stop taking notes. My mother was a servant in the Westing household. My father worked for the railroad and was the gardener on his days off. You mean you lived in the Westing house? Sandy asked with obvious surprise. You knew the Westings? I barely saw Mrs. Westing. Violet was a few years younger than I, doll-like and delicate. She was not allowed to play with other children, especially the skinny, long-legged black daughter of the servants. Gee, you must have been lonely, Judge, having nobody to play with. I played with Sam Westing. Chess. Hour after hour, I sat staring down at that chessboard. He lectured me, he insulted me, and he won every game. The judge thought of their last game. She had been so excited about taking his queen, only to have the master checkmate her in the next move. Sam Westing had deliberately sacrificed his queen, and she had fallen for it. Stupid child, you can't have a brain in that frizzy head to make a move like that. Those were the last words he ever said to her. The judge continued. I was sent to boarding school when I was 12. My parents visited me at school when they could, but I never set foot in the Westing house again, not until 2 weeks ago. Your folks must have worked really hard, Sandy said. An education like that costs a fortune. Sam Westing paid for my education. He saw that I was accepted into the best schools, probably arranged for my first job, perhaps more. I don't know. That's the first decent thing I've heard about the old man. Hardly decent, Mr. McSuthers. It was to Sam Westing's advantage to have a judge in his debt. Needless to say, I have excused myself from every case remotely connected with Westing affairs. You're awfully hard on yourself, Judge, and on him. Maybe Westing paid for your education because you were smart and needy and you'd all the rest by yourself. This is getting us nowhere, Mr. McSuthers. Just write, Westing connection, education financed by Sam Westing, debt never repaid. Theo, upset over his Skid Row snooping, took out his anger on the up button, poking it, jabbing it, until the elevator finally made its way down to the lobby. Slowly, the door slid open. He stared down at the sparking, sputtering arsenal, yelled, and belly-flopped to the carpet as rockets whizzed out of the elevator inches above his head. Boom! Boom! A blinding flash of white fire streaked through the lobby, through the open entrance door, and burst into a chrysanthemum of color in the night sky. Then the elevator door closed. The bomber had made one mistake. The last rocket blasted off when the elevator returned to the 3rd floor. Boom! By the time the bomb squad reached the scene, by way of the stairs, the smoke had cleared, but the young girl was still huddled in the hallway floor, tears streaming down her turtle-like face. For heaven's sake, say something, her mother said. Tell me where it hurts. The pain was too great to be put into words. 5 inches of Turtle's braid were badly singed. Grace Wexler attacked the policeman. Nothing but a childish prank, you said. Some childish prank. Both my children cruelly injured, almost killed. Maybe now you'll do something, now that it's too late. Unshaken by the mother's anger, the policeman held up the sign that had been taped to the elevator wall. The bomber strikes again. On the reverse sign was a handwritten composition, How I Spent My Summer Vacation, by Turtle Wexler. Grace grabbed the theme and shook it at her daughter, who was being rocked in Flora Baumbach's arms. Somebody stole this from you, didn't they, Turtle? You couldn't have done such an awful thing. Not to Angela, not to your own sister. Could you, Turtle? Could you? I want to see a lawyer, Turtle replied.